Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another live session. My name is Manny, and today I have the opportunity to chat with a good friend of mine, Wade Ryer, who is a rigging supervisor at Cinesite, and he's going to be talking with us a little bit about what he does as a character TD, a little bit about his history, and kind of give us a little overview of his workflow. And at the end, talk about his class and take any questions that you guys might have. So as most of you guys might know who've done these sessions with me before, if you have any questions, just feel free to throw them up on the chat and I'll tackle them as we go along. Obviously, Wade is a pretty busy man. And so this session will probably run closer to about 40 minutes or so. Depending on, just his schedule and everything, it's like, maybe he might be able to squeeze in a few more minutes, but without further ado, say, Wade, take it away.
Hey there, everybody. Bonjour from Montreal, Quebec. Today is Canada Day in Canada. Yeah, I'm the rigging supervisor for Cinesite Montreal. Doing a bunch of animated features up here. I worked at DreamWorks for about 6 years. Worked at Framestore in London. Worked for EA in Chicago. A bunch of other places. DNA Productions in Texas. All over the place. And so I teach the facial rigging class for CG Society. And yeah, it's a great class. This is actually one of the rigs that I'm going to teach you guys how to make for the class. You will get a copy of this rig. Let's see.
Want to show us a little bit of some of your work, Wade, like some of the stuff you've worked on?
Sure. Let's close that. Move this over here. Yeah, so some of the movies I've worked on. So these are some of the movies I worked on. I've also worked on Ant-Man, Method Studios in LA. And as a character TD for all these movies. Started way back when in 2004 this is actually a movie for real effects back in the day. Moved on to the Ant Bully, rigged Lucas, the main character. Worked on the Tail Despero in London, rigged faces for that. And then at DreamWorks, I was one of the face riggers there. Kung Fu Panda 2, Rise of the Guardians, How to Train Your Dragon 2, and a few other projects that got canceled along the way.
Yes, definitely a few.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been doing this for actually, even before this, I was doing kids software, kids educational software, and a bunch of other projects. So I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And cool. So yeah. So
yeah, let's just if you could take us through kind of your workflow, like a quick little step-by-step of how you work as a character TD.
Sure. So we'll get a model from the modeling department. And first thing we always do is do a topology check, and in our class we go over that. Kind of what's proper topology, why it's what makes good edge loop flow. Oops. Yes, okay. What makes good edge loop flow? Kind of figuring out how that character is going to move and how it's going to deform, and making sure you have the proper enough topology to do what you want to do. Once you get your topology down, I usually will do like a really quick weighting pass, put in the joints and do a quick weighting pass. Lots of times you can usually turn around a quick face rig in a couple days. I tell my students and people who work with me, it's important to fail and fail early. when you do really quick first passes, you can immediately see like, oh, I'm going to need more topology in the eyelid or whatever. It's important to see those things earlier than when you're doing the final tweaks and you want to, change things. You can still change things later on, but it's better to get everything in place early and have it be set. Once you get the basic weighting down, then we kind of go through and start blocking out shapes, refine, build different components for the eyelids, build lip setups, all that stuff. So, and then it's a lot of just kind of back and forth with animation, trying to figure out what's needed and how to get the most appealing, good-looking shapes and movement from the character. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. So I guess we'll just dig into it. So what was your first job when you graduated? What was your first 3D job?
Well, I didn't get my first real 3D job until about 2003, which is at Real Effects. First, I graduated in '97 from Syracuse University. 3D was just taken off then, but it was not the juggernaut that it is now. My first job out of school was working for Parade Magazine in New York City, doing design work for them. And I knew I wanted to get into 3D, and so I would do design work during the day, and then at night I work on my own 3D stuff. I originally wanted to be an animator, and I started off doing, back in the day they had the 10-second club where they would every month they would post a 10-second clip of audio, and everyone would, and this is before they had all the free rigs and free everything.
Yeah, that's what I remember that back in the day.
Yeah, and so everyone would design their own characters, rig them up, do everything, and animate them in a month. I mean, so it's a really quick turnaround. And so I used to do that all the time, and really got into that. And I'd have different people ask me like, "How'd you set the face up on that?" Or "How'd you do make the character do this and that?" So I started answering a lot of questions and started writing some articles on rigging. Even though I always planned on being an animator, but I kind of figured out that I could rig pretty well, and I kind of liked it. And I actually liked it more than the actual animation part itself. And applied for a job in Texas, and I was in New York City. And so I got I think it was a 3-month offer. So I packed up my stuff and went down to work at Real Effects in Dallas. And the 3 months turned into a year. And then after a year, I went over to DNA Productions. And DNA did Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah, yeah.
And we did the Ant Bully over there, which is an animated feature film over there. And met a lot of great people. And unfortunately, they closed at the end. It was about 3 months before we were finishing up on the movie. And they were supposed to do a whole bunch of series of movies. And the head of the company all called us all in, and good news and bad news. Good news is the movie's almost done. It looks great. Bad news is Warner Brothers pulled on the deal, and we're going to be closing shop here in a couple of months. And layoffs happen all the time.
It happens. It's a part of the industry.
It's. I remember talking with people at DreamWorks, freaking out about layoffs and this and that. I'm like, it's a part of our business. It is what it is.
It's a part of any business, right?
Yeah, it is. It's
a part of any business. So let's just talk a little bit about just, I know you kind of gave us a little overview of how you work, but let's kind of go into it in a little bit more detail.
Sure.
So as you mentioned, the first thing is you get an asset from the modeling department. Mm-hmm. So how does being a modeler? I know you have a little bit of understanding of, well, not a little bit, but you have a good understanding of modeling. Mm-hmm. How does being a modeler help you as a character TD? And is it something that you think is essential for all character TDs to have?
No, I don't think it's necessarily essential for all character TDs. It definitely helps. With character TDs, there's kind of a broad spectrum of character TDs out there. You have some guys who are, hardcore computer science guys who are, script and code, and they can't draw to save their life. They can't draw a stick figure. And then you have people, like me, who's kind of a bit more artistic. And I started off actually in illustration before I got into computer graphics. And so, I'd like to draw and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to know how to model, but it helps definitely. Try and figure out how to make it a nice, appealing shape and what that looks like, and making your rig do that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so obviously, how important is topology? How important of a role does topology play in creating an effective rig?
It's tremendously huge. If you don't have good topology, you can't get a good rig. I think it's pretty much simple as that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Crap in, crap out, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can make it work, but it obviously makes your job that much harder.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had the opportunity, would you prefer to adjust the topology of the character as opposed to sending it back to modeling?
Wait,
so the question is, if you had the opportunity, would you prefer to adjust the topology on your own as opposed to sending it back to modeling?
I usually send things back to modeling just because it's their job. So yeah. It depends. I mean, if modeling is in a bind, and if it's something super simple, I'll handle it myself. But if it's we need a major thing done, say with the brows or whatever, I'll definitely send it back to modeling.
Okay.
Because that's what they do. So
cool. So where do you see the future of modeling in rigging? Do you think rigging should be in charge of? Well, it's funny. It's kind of similar to what we just asked, which is this person is asking, do you think that rigging should be in charge of topology and modeling focus more on forms and shapes?
That's a pretty good question. That's always been kind of a hot topic. You could have your modelers just focus on sculpting and have riggers get the exact topology they want. It kind of varies. I mean,
it is an interesting one. Like how would, part of it makes sense because as a modeler, when it comes to topology, you obviously use your own judgment, right? Based on how this character is going to be moving, design, but at the end of the day, a lot of the notes and the feedback that you are getting comes from rigging or animation, right? And more specifically, it comes from animation and then it goes to you guys, and then you guys send it over, send it back to modeling. And so at that point, as long as the shape is consistent, then what's your personal take on that? Do you think that, like, personally, do you are you on the camp of no, just send it back because that's their job, or it's like if there is an easy way for me to just do that, then I would get exactly what I want?
It depends. Like if you're working for a big studio, I would kind of tend to say let the department take care of their job. You can't do everything. But I've freelanced for smaller studios where it's a lot more. You have to be a bit more of a generalist and kind of able to do things like that. And it's you have to wear many hats in the smaller studios when you're freelancing. But the bigger studios, I just say let modeling handle it. Let them take care of it. You can't focus on the actual rigging aspect. Yeah.
No, I agree. So what is the biggest mistake that you see from models in a production environment?
I would say just topology, not having proper edge loop flow. Most places it's and even from students I've seen, they're all usually pretty good. It's just kind of making sure you have enough loops around the eyelid to make sure you're going to clear that eyeball. Make sure it's not too heavy in one area. Make sure it's like your topology is nice and smooth and even, so you can get nice looking shapes, and if there's not like zigzaggy stuff going on.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Cool. And how involved is rigging in the production process for developing a character? Like, how early on does character TDs get involved in that process?
I know it varies from studio to studio. I know at Cinesite, rigging's in. Like, I'm in there day one when they have the character kickoff, and even when a character designer is going through stuff, they'll ask, like, hey, is this something that we can do? Can we make this crazy clown character or whatever do backflips or whatever? And I think the best kind of environments that I've worked in, it's been a really kind of collaborative experience where modeling, rigging, and animation all kind of get an even say, and it's a lot of it's a collaborative creation where everyone's doing stuff, and there's a lot of back and forth, and you try something quick and you hand it off to animation, and then they say, oh, we need to I don't know, add another limb or something like that, and then you go back to modeling and get them to add this thing in, and it's a lot, it's a team effort.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So let's transition more into just just the actual aspect of rigging. How do you choose the best rigging method?
I don't think there's necessarily a single method that's everyone's going to have their own way of doing things. As far as like faces go, like I will rig with blend shapes and joints. There's some people who think that blend shapes are the only way. Everyone's going to have their opinion, and they're entitled to it. But it's what's best is it's a subjective kind of, I guess it's a subjective kind of question.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously it's depends on the project, right?
Yeah, for sure. What's needed. Yeah.
So and on that note, custom rigs versus partly automated rigging. What do you prefer, when, and why?
I think this goes back to depending on. I don't necessarily have a preference, but if you're working for a big major studio and you're going to need to crank out a ton of characters, you're going to need some kind of automation. It's just going to save time. If it's like a one-off, a pirate unicorn that's some kind of Pegasus, it's something super unique. It's kind of hard to automate something like that. But there's a lot of great auto riggers out there. Was it Advanced Skeleton? I know a lot of people use. I wrote my own Mr. Setup, where you can kind of go through and say, okay, here's the chest, here's the hips, and it builds a rig for you, like just basic body rig. And then most good studios, major studios you go to, will have a whole pipeline set up and some sort of a builder to use for your characters. I have gone into smaller shops too for freelance, and you go in there and you ask them, all right, what kind of tools do you have? And like, well, you are the rigging tool. So I'm like, oh, okay. And that kind of actually brings me to another thing I should bring up. Like working at the smaller studios versus big studios. Like I'm working at Cinesite right now, which is probably a bit more of a mid-range studio. It's not super small. I think we're probably about 150 people. I think we're actually planning on going up to 500.
Wow.
Yeah. So the anime features we're doing there, so they haven't really done much of anime features. They've historically been doing a lot of like visual effects and things like that. They did Reverend and Independence Day. And so I'm helping them get their animated feature
pipeline.
Yeah, and everything all off the ground, which is actually really cool because being in early and kind of figuring out a bunch of problems is pretty fun and tiring at times and frustrating. And it needs to be done fast and quick with lower budget. It's not like DreamWorks where you have an army of people. I mean, with DreamWorks, it's like when we were there, it was like 2,000 people or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So
21 or 2200, something ridiculous.
you're one of an army of people, and a lot of the stuff there has already been kind of established.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have your, you can help out in different areas, and you can definitely make an impact. But with the more mid-range to smaller places, there's a lot more. I think when you're a student and getting out into the field, I think you actually get a lot more hands-on and a lot more learning at the mid-range and smaller studios than
I agree.
Than the bigger studios, where you kind of you're just a gear in the giant machine, and a lot of times you just push buttons on the assembly line of making cartoons.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's obviously, a little bit more pressure and stress involved with working at the small to medium-sized studios, because things are constantly on the go and things are constantly shifting.
Yep.
But there is a huge advantage to, kind of being battle tested, right?
Yeah.
And kind of going, especially when you're young and you're a student, you obviously, you have that zest, that energy, where it's just like, oh, I could do anything. And to be given that opportunity to kind of really flex yourself, I think there's some huge, pluses there, So, in terms of your workflow, so do you rely more on Mel, or Python scripting pretty heavily, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Script quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And someone had a question as relates to Mr. Setup. Could you make that available?
No. As I said before, if you do something well, you never give it away for free. I used to give it away for free years ago, and no more.
Okay. That's fair enough. So speaking of Cinesite, will the rigging department at Cinesite also take on roles of cloth, skin, hair simulation?
Yes.
And animation fixing?
Yes, we do. We handle everything. Rigging, cloth, hair, all that stuff. We take care of it. Okay. And Cinesite is hiring. So if you guys are interested and would like to come to Montreal, check out Cinesite's website and apply online.
Do you have, I would say by the towards the end of the session, Wade, if you could just throw up a link or something on the chat.
Sure. And
we'll get that out. So Alex is asking, saying that he'll pay for Mr. Setup. So how much animation do you think is brought to life with the rigs versus how much is added by muscle or cloth sims? And how are sims and rigs tied together? That's obviously two-part question. So let's just focus on the first one.
How much is brought to life by muscles? Muscles are not. I've actually telling you this before. Here's a dirty little secret about rigging. No one uses the muscle systems, the built-in muscle systems. It's too slow and too heavy. I know they show, like, in the making of, like, I remember DreamWorks used to show like a making of with Shrek with bones and muscles and all this stuff. Like, no, they totally made that up for like the making of. The muscle systems are it's really slow and heavy, and you need better solutions than that to be able to animate it and to get some kind of a decent frames per second on your rigs.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And the second part of the question is, how are sims and rigs tied together? Are they tied together?
I mean, it is kind of two different disciplines, but they're both very technical. So they kind of do, like, I know Disney, a lot of the riggers kind of do both. We do both at Cinesite as well. It's the
same case at DreamWorks?
No, at DreamWorks, the CFX was a completely different department where they would handle all the hair and cloth over there. We would do like a really quick rough, rig on any kind of clothing, but at the end it would be handed over to CFX, and oftentimes they would just delete whatever we had done. But DreamWorks, so we were rigging and Rig, the proprietary rigging software over there. So a lot of the CFX guys didn't know it and didn't want to necessarily know Rig, so they were all Maya guys.
Cool. And so this question is: do you rely on tools from just one program, i.e., Maya, or do you have to know how to rig in every program out there?
I'd say, I mean, depends. I only know, I mean, I started off in Softimage 3D and then got into Maya like in 2000 when it was kind of taken off. And I saw that everything was going towards Maya. But I know like a lot of games are all in Max. It's pretty much Maya or Max. I know a lot of games use Max. Softimage is going away, but be safe. It's best to learn Maya.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Do most film-based rigs have on-face controls, or do they prefer a separate control setup for sliders?
For like face stuff?
Yeah.
I know. So DreamWorks and Pixar, they have a really slick setup where there's no curves at all, where you just select pieces of geometry. Did you use Primo at all when you were training?
Briefly.
It's really cool. So there's no curves at all, and you could just pick parts of it. When you'd highlight over like the chin, you could just select the chin and move it like that. And there was no curves at all. Those are the only places I've seen it. Cinesite, Frame Store, everywhere else is all kind of like curves driving the rig.
Okay.
The Disney and the Pixar ones are slick and cool, but there is a fair amount of time that goes into setting up all that stuff. Where if you're working at a mid-range or smaller shop, it's so much quicker just to make a curve like this and to drive your rig, as opposed to like having a geometry that with the complex controllerless setup that they have like at Disney or at Pixar and DreamWorks.
Cool. And someone is asking, and I don't know if you've ever used it, but what do you think about Joel Alter's L brush / lip surface?
I have not used it. I've heard decent things. Personally, I try and avoid plugins a bit, simply because if you are relying on plugins, like in a major studio environment, then you have to, if you send something off to render, then you have to make sure that the render farm has the plugins installed. And then you have to make sure that the animators that are getting your rig have that plugin installed. And it gets a little bit messy. Then if you want to open it up, later on, you have to make sure that the plugin's installed. Where most of the time I try and make sure that everything just works within the rig and use everything within Maya.
Okay, and so I take it this would be the same answer for this question as relates to your use of agnostic software such as Fabric to generate rigging solutions.
I know it's really cool. I've heard nothing but good things about that. But no, I've not gotten into it too much.
Okay. All righty. So do you use Follicles? I'm assuming this is Follicles. Follicles
Sure.
On nerve surfaces to control the lips.
I don't. So you can have a follicle to that would ride along on the surface. It tends. We were actually doing that at Cinesite, and I think we're actually going to get rid of it, just because the follicles can get heavy and slow down the rig. I'll use follicles for things like ribbon lips. I could show you. Let's see. There's our ribbon lip setup, so that ribbon lips work. We'll have like NURBS plane here, NURBS plane down here, and we basically have a follicle on each face of the NURBS surface. And then we have a joint that's parented to those follicles. So if we take a look at that, here's our NURBS surface. And then we're going to have driver joints that actually drive this mesh. There's our follicles. And then under each follicle, there's a joint. And then these driver joints get driven by these controls. And so you can get some really nice kind of freedom there. with the lips, kind of making those kind of shapes. Let me hide the rest of this now. With Maya. So yeah, so most of the controls I usually have it just so they're not on the actual surface. I just have it just kind of around where it is.
Just going through it?
What's that?
No, are you just setting that up, or?
Oh, which?
No. The you already covered the M lip, right?
The which?
The lip?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So
yes.
I was just taking a couple other questions. So we often get pinch or clavicle, and we often get pinches in the clavicle and pelvis area during animation. Is there a better way of rigging / skinning on that area to avoid pinching, apart from creating correctives for that?
That would be a great question for Nikos Andrechka's body rigging class that is offered through CG Society. Yeah. He covers body rigging. You have to check out his workshop. He's really good, and he's an ILM right now. So for armpits and crotches, those are always super tricky areas. So there's our face rigging class. Where's Nico's class?
Should be. I think you skipped it. Go back right there. It's the one with the shot from Deadpool.
Oh yeah, there you go. Oh. Yeah, check out Nico's class. He goes over all through body rigging.
Cool.
But usually, it's mainly skinning and corrective shapes.
So it's just really so there's really no other way around it.
No.
Okay, so it's just a painstaking process.
It is. Those areas have been, troublesome areas for 15 years, and there's no perfect solution. It's mainly just correctives and waiting. There's some cool stuff coming out with Delta Mush in Maya 2016. They kind of automatically smooth things down a bit. And then there's always
all the saying just to brute force it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And there's certain things where it's just there's no easy way around it. You just have to go in and just brute force it. Alex is asking, do you use PSD?
Pose deformers, yes, I do use corrective shapes.
Okay, cool. And hey, Wade, how do you usually approach posed space deformations? Sometimes you encounter conflicting information being read from IK/FK joints. Distance tools.
Mike Comet has there's a Comet Reader tool that's pretty good. I know we use at Cinesite. You just have to be able, figure out, get a way to measure what's going on. In my class, we'll do corrective. Like there's a corrective shape right here. Like as the jaw opens, you can see how the corners of the lip kind of come in a bit.
Mm-hmm. Could you zoom in on that a bit more so we get a better view of it?
Yeah. And then as the lip pushes up, we've got a corrective shape in there.
Yeah. Cool. So tips on rigging / skinning shoulders. Any off the bat pointers? It's apparently his nemesis at the moment.
I feel you. It probably will be for quite some time. Check out NG Skin Tools. There's a free new tab. NG Skin Tools. It's a free skinning tool that's outstanding. You have to check it out. You can download it for free. You can throw them a couple bucks. I think there's like a donation thing. I use it like a madman. We go over how to use this NG Skin Tools in our face rigging class. Come on, it's being slow. One of the big things is their smoothing just works like how you think it should. In Maya, lots of times if you're, you could be trying to smooth out a shoulder and sometimes it might pick up your thumb joint or something like that. With NG Skin Tools, it works like how you think it should. If you smooth out a shoulder area, it will smooth normal and it won't be picking up, finger joints and whatnot where it shouldn't be.
Cool. And someone has asked, okay, so we're going to save that question for a little later, but what were some of the unique challenges for rigging ants in Ant-Man?
Really hard thing was trying to figure out. So I wrote, I helped write the builds, the leg build system for the ants, and this is my internet's being slow. So the ant legs, it's like a normal leg, except there's another joint in essentially where the forearm was. But figuring out how to get the knees to bend and then the extra joint to bend was very tricky. There's NG Skin Tools. Go there and download that.
Cool. Could you could you paste that in the chat window?
Sure.
So that way everybody has it. Or if you could just tell me where it's at, the name.
ngskintools.com.
Oh, okay. ngskintools.com. All right, there it is. So I'll copy that onto the chat so everybody can have it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go, guys. So speaking of the ants, an Ant-Man,
mm-hmm.
How did you go about gathering references for that? Did you have to go through a lot of references?
Yeah, so I worked on that at Method Studios. Method is a great place to work. I really love working with them. Really good people, really smart. They had a ton of reference for ants for that and figuring out and all the ant anatomy and all that stuff and how they wanted it to all look. So that they had everything there. Personally, I do use Pinterest like a lot. Anytime I do a new character, I go on Pinterest. I know some people use it to pick out shoes they like. I use it for art stuff and collect. Whenever I do a new character, I'll set up a new board and get as much reference stuff for as I can, and then whenever I find like good reference anatomy stuff and things like that, I'll put it on there. So and then if I find cool rigging videos, I'll put that up there. But I did a Frankenstein character, and I wanted to find as much as I could on Frankenstein. I'm doing a pirate guy right now, and I went through as much pirate stuff as I could find. Like how they're, how different people would wear their boots or buckles or whatever and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So staying on the subject in terms of, ants and more mechanical, more rigid surface rigging,
mm-hmm.
What is the general thought process and workflow for rigging characters like Transformers or mechs to prevent their dozens of interlocking pieces from clipping and intersecting?
I don't know. Hang on. My son is not taking a nap. So for more hard surface stuff like that, to not have it, I don't know. I didn't work on Transformers. Most stuff I do is actually usually more organic.
More organic, yeah. But but I know you've rigged almost everything under the sun.
Yeah.
So how would you go about doing that, or do you think is it just like with everything, just brute force and carefully?
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah. I mean, I did do. I wrote like an auto car vehicle maker, where you kind of tell it where the. Turn the volume off on that. Where you can basically tell it, all right, here's the body, here's the wheels, and all that. So I would think for something like that with the Transformers type of thing, it would probably want to write a more procedural type of rig, like with Python, where it would just go through and just automatically set up all your controls to be proper like that.
Cool. And when would you use direct controls on a 3D space for slider controls?
What's the question?
The question is, when would you use direct controls on a 3D space or slider controls?
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, I was a little unclear on that question. I believe that was from Hiran. If you could rephrase that question, Hiran, that would be great. So moving along, how do you go about placing joints procedurally? Do you prefer building complex user interface to customize the rig and building in its steps, or make scripts that build the rigs automatically?
You can only automate so much stuff. You definitely do. It's best, I think, to have it kind of be like Mr. Potato Head, where you can kind of say, okay, yeah, for like setting things up like arms and shoulders, say, okay, here's a shoulder, here's an elbow, here's a wrist, make an IK, FK limb. There's always, like I said, there's always going to be super custom stuff if you have a like unicorn Pegasus that needs some kind of special whatever. But it is good to have automated procedural stuff.
Cool. What is the most time-consuming aspect of rigging, you'd say?
Probably either skinning or corrective shape making.
Okay. And what do you say is the most enjoyable aspect of it?
I think figuring out a tough problem. I actually enjoy like doing props. Like props are actually kind of fun. I don't know if you feel about that, like with modeling, because you work on characters. Like you work on like a DreamWorks. I would work on a character rig anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes a couple months on the same character. Where props would be fun because they're like little puzzles.
Yeah. Quick
little things where you can like figuring out how to make a bow and arrow rig for something like that is kind of fun.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I completely agree with you. It's like because you could add so much to them. It's like they're kind of like their own little. In our case, they're their own little environment, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's like the trebuchet towers that on Dragons. It's like we had some of those, and they were fun, at least from our perspective, to actually try to figure out the mechanism.
Yeah,
how they would work.
Yeah, totally, right.
And modeling that accordingly. It's like okay, this is where they would load this. This is where the weight would be. This is the spring load. Like stuff like that was always fun.
Yeah.
So.
But it's fun to work on characters and
of course,
life and do something really involved that's got a lot of detail. When you're working on more animated feature films, it's not always fun, but it's satisfying. I think seeing it done.
Definitely. So, in talking about production, so when rigging in a production, there could be times where parts of the model might require some alterations, whether it's from a design or topology standpoint. So the question is, how do you guys deal with such problems where you might have already rigged the character, right? And you have to go back in. The modeling department, design department goes back in and completely changes something. Yeah. And the example that he's giving is, let's just say the director suddenly decides to change, their mind, and now the character has a third arm growing out of his left cheek. Yeah. How does that affect the whole creature pipeline, especially for facial rigging team?
It happens all the time. For, as far as rigging goes, you try and salvage what you can, save out weights, transfer things, using Maya's transfer by components, transfer attributes, where you can, transfer over either vertex position, or if you keep the same UVs, you can usually transfer over weighting and shapes and things like that. So there's ways around it.
Okay, cool. All right. So how long does it take you to create a rig? Let's just say for this character here, what's a good time frame, to create a rig? What is expected in the industry?
Like I said, it depends on the studio, and depends on what you're working. Like commercial stuff, it can be as fast as a couple days, but it doesn't have to be super crazy robust. It's usually a lot of the commercial stuff's usually held together with bubble gum and duct tape. Where the stuff at DreamWorks, it's got to be super polished, and you're refining it over and over, and you could be spending a couple of months. So. But I'd say on average, you're probably looking at about a week or two for a face, and usually a week or two for a body.
Okay, cool. And someone is asking a little one-off question, but I guess we could touch upon it because there's a couple of people who voted it up, so to speak. Hey Wade, you've worked everywhere. How hard is it to start working in the industry for a 34-year-old?
It's completely doable. Absolutely doable. Work hard, dedicate yourself to to learning and getting better. There is no age limit on this at all.
Cool. I would definitely second that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about motion capture.
Yeah.
Or rigs for motion capture.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are some of the differences between doing a rig that's set up for motion capture versus a rig that is set up for just traditional animation, or just hand keyed animation or hand animation?
Yeah, sure. Well, you don't have to worry as much about controls. It's more about gathering the data from the motion capture and hooking it into the rig, as opposed to making an interface for animators to move around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Basically. So yeah.
Cool. Is there a particular part of the face rig that you feel is the best place to start when laying out a base?
As far as topology wise, or just
rigging?
I would say the mouth.
The mouth. Okay.
You get a good mouth, and you can I would say, especially when you're doing face shapes, if you can get your narrow and your wide nailed, getting everything else to flow together it just comes together.
Cool.
If you look at something like the Muppets, they talked. They didn't necessarily have lips moving around and all that kind of stuff, and that was just the jaw open.
Mm-hmm.
So I would focus more on the mouth area.
Cool. And what would you say, and this is a question that people have asked now probably 4 or 5 times, but so what would you say are the major differences between rigging for games versus rigging for films?
It's getting closer and closer every day. It used to be that games couldn't handle blend shapes, and so it had to be all joints, but I know nowadays a lot of game engines do handle blend shapes, so it's pretty much the same. But it used to be that for animated features in commercials, it was you would be having blend shapes and games for joints. So I think the best solution is to do both, like joints and blend shapes for things.
Okay. And so you would say it's as you said, it's getting a lot closer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty close.
Yeah, same for modeling too, right?
Okay. Yeah, for modeling, it's like we had a session 2 or 3 sessions back with the character arts team from Naughty Dog, and
yeah,
you look at the level of detail and you know,
Oh,
in
it's
terms
crazy,
of
right?
just topology. Yeah, it's getting pretty close.
Yeah.
It's getting pretty close. Obviously, it's like I think where it starts to differ a bit is just in terms of more wrinkle details. That's obviously they rely a lot more on, you know, normal maps versus we have that incorporated into, you know, the model or as a displacement map, but it's getting pretty close.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for
Very
sure.
close. How much do you split your rigs into segments? One thing Lace is saying, one thing he hears over and over again is how important it is to modularize the rigs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, doing having all your eye setups here. I'll try and keep all my eye stuff together. You know, do a different setup for the brows. We got a lip setup here. Yes, it's very important.
Yeah, definitely. So, what nodes would you take with you in a rigging survival kit? Thought that was a good question.
Yeah. So as far as I would go with my utility nodes, let's see. I would go with multiply, divide, reverse, and a blend.
Okay. Cool. That would be it, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So, man, time flies. Remember, we were saying that we would try to do it in 40, and we're at 53 now.
There we go.
And I have probably another 30 questions. So, I'm going to try to jump around a bit. Sorry, guys. We'll probably do another session with Wade. Obviously, this is something that people are really interested in. I thought, oh, it's rigging. It's like, we'll see. It's like, people have asked for it, but obviously, you guys have a lot of questions. So, the question is, what are some of the major advances that has happened with rigging since you've been doing it, since you started?
Rigging. I would say there's more in modeling that's changed than rigging per se. Mm-hmm. You had the advent, ZBrush and things like that really take over. I would say that, we're still using, I was using joints and blend shapes 15 years ago. We're still using it now. I think, there's things like the NG skin tools that's come around that's been really nice. A lot of it's the same. There are things coming out all the time though, like your in 2016 you have the Delta Mush stuff. And there's different ways to. I think it's rigging's gotten easier. Like there's things like the transfer components that I was showing you earlier, where you can or the transfer attributes, where you can like transfer over weighting by UVs and things like that. Maya's always coming out with good stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
But the basics are always there, or always blend shapes and joints.
Okay, cool. So are you using blend shapes more often than deformers?
No, I use them pretty much equally, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Roghov is asking, how could you seamlessly switch from IK to FK and vice versa in a particular shot? Any tricks or scripts for that?
Yeah, there's a guy by the name of Zeth, Z-E-T-H Willie. If you look him up, he does a really good explanation of FK-IK. I assume he's talking about FK-IK limb and limb switching. The toughest thing with that is figuring out where to put your pole vector, where your elbow control. Getting like your FK to match your IK, that's easy. But getting your pole vector on the elbow of your IK arm, getting that place right is really hard. And if you look up that guy, Zeth Willie, he does a really good explanation. It's a lot of math to figure out where to put that pole vector. And he does a good explanation of that. So check him out. He can explain it better than I can.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how many bones would you say it takes to rig, a model with this much control?
I think, I don't know. Like we'll have like the basic, like, you know, the head joint, the jaw joint, things like that. But then like we'll put in the eyelid setup that I teach in my class. We'll have a joint for each and every vert here. So you can really get some really nice control. I think total, you know, joint count in the characters probably something like 80, 90, something like that.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So Alex is asking, have you always been good at rigging, or did you take some time to get good at it?
Like I said, I didn't necessarily go to school for rigging. I originally went to school for illustration. I wanted to work, you know, back in the Stone Age when I went to college. 3D was not around. And I wanted to go to school to become an animator, you know, drawing for Disney, something like that. And halfway through my college, I went to school at Syracuse University. Halfway through college, Toy Story came out. When I saw that, I was like, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And there was a computer graphics program there. It was pretty basic. Joined the computer graphics program. I loved it immediately, and you know, stayed with it. And then, like I said, and this is back in the day when you know, you couldn't have Maya on, you know, a laptop or whatever. It was on SGI, so it was really hard to access it. And SGI machines were insanely expensive. I mean, they were like, you know, something like 80 grand or something like that. And it wasn't until after I got out of school I started doing, you know, design multimedia work, when, you know, things like Max and Softmagic would be worked on. You could use it on Windows NT, and then Maya came out, and then Maya came on Windows NT, and yeah, it became a lot more to the people, I guess.
Yeah, right on. So, so this is another thing that you've touched upon a bit, and this is something that we had quite a few questions on differentiations, which is automated rigs. So with so many automated bipedal humanoid auto rig solutions out there, and tools becoming more and more powerful, where do you see the future of, you know, creature TDs? Do you see, you know, rigging becoming more of an assembly line department under the supervision of a more code-centric TD who simply generates modules and, you know, stitches rigs together for the pipeline? Yeah. So what's your take on that?
I was actually reading an article that was talking about that fairly recently, and they were saying about how rigging artists will kind of switch into two different groups, which I kind of see already, where you have your super technical computer science guys that script and code, and then you have your more creative riggers who can, you know, sculpt, blend shapes, and do more things like that. I don't see like the automation of rigs. I don't see it taking away any work, and I mean, there's more and more stuff being out there, and you know, there's such a lot of people in the industry are always worried about, you know, students taking their jobs or their jobs being sent to India or, you know, whatever. But man, if you're good at what you do and you're passionate, you'll always be busy. You know, there's always going to be work. There's always going to be stuff for you.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So the other question is, Sir Wade, are there any instances where an animator has to request a special type of rig for his or her specific needs in an assigned shot? If there are, kindly give an example. Thank you very much.
So like one-off type of rigs.
Yeah.
Happened this week. I had we're working on a gnome movie. They actually just announced it, so I can talk a little bit about that. We're doing a gnome movie, and they needed just a one-off rig to have a gnome hat come down, like cover the guy's head, and it was just a quick little lattice rig that I made for it.
And so that was just a one-off.
Yep.
Cool. How do you manage time constraints?
Work big to small. Figure out what the big things need to be done, get those done, and worry about the details later.
Cool. can a 3D generalist learn to rig at an industry level, or is it just too specialized?
No, I don't think so. I think it's. I'm from the mindset where I think it's great to be a generalist. I'm a bit of a generalist myself. I can model and rig and animate ish. I think it's great to be a generalist. The more you know, the better off you are. Where I think sometimes you can pigeonhole yourself if you just do this one little thing. And a lot of the big studios, you kind of get pigeonholed into doing one specific thing, where smaller mid-range studios, you kind of have to wear a bunch of hats.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And Wade, it's thank you so much. We're going to take just 2 questions, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
And then we'll just talk about, have you talk a little bit about the class and what people should expect, because we have quite a few questions on that. So we'll just take 2 questions. And I'm sorry, guys, it's already been an hour and some change. And Wade has been gracious to give us this time. So, and we'll probably just do another session, as well, to try to cover some more stuff. So, so the questions are, how do you incorporate hair within a rig? Do animators have specific controls for them?
Yes. So I can't talk too much about that, because we do.
Do you want to skip that question, or?
No, I mean, you can set up FK joints, and there's also ways to set up dynamic joints where you can have dynamic joints move the mesh that then can move your geometry. It depends. If you're simming the hair curves themselves for every single shot, that most major studios will do, you can do that. But there's tricks and ways to make it look natural for where you're not simming everything.
Okay, cool. And describe the process for fine displacement maps driven by facial rays.
For like wrinkles and things like that?
Yeah.
You would have different regions basically triggered by, you would have a distance node. So you'd say like, okay, you could put a distance node between this point and this point. And as those points get closer together, you would have that trigger on. And whatchamacallit, yeah. For most animated features, though, they usually will have the wrinkles modeled in, because when you're animating it, you're not seeing the render. Where the displacement wrinkles, they look great, but you're not seeing them until render time. So they're used a lot more for like visual effects and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your workshop, because you kind of give an overview of what's covered and what people should expect. And also what is required going into the class. That was a question we had from a lot of people, which is, if there's any prereqs, or any requirements, in terms of knowledge base going into this workshop.
There's no major prerequisites. If you're familiar with Maya, that's certainly a good start. So it's all in Maya. A basic understanding of Maya, I think, is good prerequisite. But as far as like rigging, we've had tons of students that came in that had no rigging experience whatsoever, and they've done great. There's always, there'll be some people who work in the industry and actually rig faces for other studios that will come in, and it's quite a array of people that take the class. So it's an 8-week class. I provide a model and for the class, but I do encourage people to make their own if they're up for it, or at least take my model and make it a little bit more different. The first week we kind of go over the general workflow, how we're going to do things. Second week we get into topology and edge loop flow. Third week we get into joint skinning, and so on and so forth from there.
And the remaining weeks, is it just kind of the remaining weeks? Is it just finalizing?
Then we get into blend. We do 2 weeks of blend shapes, and then hooking everything up and building all the controls and all that stuff.
Cool. And can this translate to 3D Studio Max?
It can. I mean, all the theories are there. If you know Maya, it's a lot better. But everything, all programs have joint skinning and blend shapes. It's just like I remember when I came from Softimage to Maya, it really wasn't that big of a transition. It's just like where's the blend shape button, where's the this and that button. So all the theories are the same.
Cool. All right, guys. I think that's it. We're at an hour and almost 10 minutes. Wade, thank you so much for just taking time off of out of your busy schedule on your vacation.
You're welcome.
To be with us here. So and thank you everybody for stopping by and participating. Thank you for all your questions. Sorry for those we didn't get a chance to answer, but hopefully we answered enough for you guys. So thank you so much again, Wade. And definitely check out Wade's workshop. We have the link that's attached to the webinar. We're going to be sending you guys a link to the recording of this sometime next week, and also a link to the recording for the previous session we had as well with the guys from Quixel. And we're going to be sending an updated email for the substance one that we didn't get a chance to do because of technical difficulties. So we're going to be doing that sometime next week. So it's going to be a busy week coming up. So once again, thank you guys. Thank you for stopping by. It's always great to see that these sessions help people so much.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Cool. All right, Wade. Thanks again,
Awesome.
and I'll let you get back to your family, enjoying your time off.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care, buddy.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.